What's up you guys, it's Marina. So today I'm going to be sharing with you what books I read in the month of March and April. I only ended up reading 6 books between the 2 months, so it was kind of a slow reading time for me, but with everything going on with the pandemic, I really haven't been in the right space to be reading a lot, and I'm only now just starting to get back into reading. So I read 5 books in March and 1 book in April. So let's just jump right in. So the first book I ended up reading was The Wedding by Nicholas Sparks. This is the companion book to The Notebook, and I tried reading this book like 10 years ago, and I got about a chapter or 2 chapters into it and I just put it down, and I pretty much feel the same way now, even though it's been like 10 years. I ended up reading this book and it just wasn't worth the time that I spent reading it, if that makes sense. I don't feel like it adds a lot to the story of Noah and Allie, which to me would be why I wanted to read this, is to get more knowledge on like the relationship and what happened after The Notebook. It follows a few generations afterwards. I want to say it's their granddaughter. I read this like 2 months ago, so I can't really remember the details, but there isn't as much about Noah and Allie in it. I think you see a little bit about Noah, but it's really about the granddaughter's like wedding and stuff, and it was okay, but it just really wasn't what I wanted, and it was very, very short for a Nicholas Sparks book. Most of the time they're like, 500, 400 pages, and this was like 260, so I did fly through it. It was very, very quick, but it just didn't bring enough to the story for me that I was glad that I read it, if that makes sense. Like, it was just very underwhelming. The next book I ended up reading, I listened to an audiobook, and that was The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is the first book I read by Ruth Ware, and overall I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, I would say, but I did really enjoy it, and I am glad that I read it. It takes place on a cruise ship, and there is potentially a murder that happened that our main character witnesses, but no one else believes her that it happened, and it's just one of those stories where you don't know if the narrator is reliable or not, and then when everything kind of comes together in the end, it's really, really interesting. But overall, the thing I liked the most about the book was the atmosphere. Like, you can feel just this creepy, eerie sense of being stuck on a cruise ship and not knowing who to trust and what's going on, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. But it definitely made me want to pick up more books by Ruth Ware, and I did end up reading another one, which I'll talk about later in the video, and I probably enjoyed that one a lot more than I enjoyed this one, but I did still really enjoy this. So the next book I ended up reading was The Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. This is a book I've seen talked about on BookTube a lot, and I just kind of jumped into it on a whim. I had not really a lot of idea of what the book was about, but I loved it way more than I thought I was going to. So it's about a couple whose marriage is falling apart, and he is, I want to say, a Major League Baseball player, and a whole bunch of other guys in the MLB kind of team up with him, and they basically read really cheesy romance novels to adapt to their real life and solve their own marriage problems, which sounds like super cheesy, but it was so much fun, and just the whole friendship with these guys was so like heartwarming, and I just loved reading those scenes, especially when they're sitting in his house and they're like playing dress up or something, and they're like painting their nails, and they have like just like ridiculous clothing on, and then the girl comes home. I loved that scene. It was so cute, and I just really appreciated that friendship. That's one of the things that I love the most in books, is reading really strong friendship groups, and just because I don't know, I guess I don't really have that. Like, I don't have friends that I spend that much time with that I have those like situations, so it's nice to read them. But the romance was really, really cute. I just loved it so, so much, and I can't wait to read the sequel to this. And then I listened to The Moment of Truth by Casey West, an audiobook. This is the 3rd book in her like companion series. I have no idea what it's called, and I don't remember what I rated the other 2 books in it, but it might be my favorite from it. No, probably not. Maybe, I don't remember. Probably should have looked that up, but I did really enjoy this. I've had a really hard time with Casey West recently because her books were my favorites, and then they kind of dropped off, and I stopped appreciating some of the romances or the characters. It just felt a little bit too young for me, but this last one, I think the one before it, kind of pulled me back in, and I've really been enjoying them. So this one is about a girl whose brother died, I want to say. I don't think he committed suicide, but he died, a while back, and she's kind of living in his shadow. Her parents are still dealing with all the grief, and they don't really know how to handle it. So it's her trying to win back her parents' attention among all this other stuff that's going on at school with this guy who just keeps showing up in like a masked outfit, and she doesn't know who he is, but he keeps ruining all these situations for her, and there's like a lot of mystery involved with that. But I really liked how this book dealt with like grief of a sibling that you don't necessarily know, and how your relationship with your parents is very much tinged by that. I've dealt with a lot of loss in my life. I've lost both my parents and a lot of friends and stuff. So stories that involve grief, I always really enjoy because it kind of gives me a new perspective and it kind of helps me deal with it a little bit, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed this book and I can't wait to see what she has out next. The last book I read in March was Between the Spark and the Burn by April Genevieve Tolchok, and this was the lowest book I ended up rating. It was 2 stars for me, and it just felt very unnecessary. So this book was written in 2012? 2014, and it reads like a book from 2009. It's just very juvenile, and it's got a really nice like spooky atmosphere to it, but the actual plot and the characters to me just aren't fleshed out enough, considering this is a companion novel and there's 2 books in the series. There was just not enough going on, and it wasn't necessary to me. Like, they could have put it all in one book. They could have fleshed out the characters a little bit more if they were going to make it 2 books, and it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. It just felt very service level, and that not enough actually happened to make me want to read this, unfortunately. Like, I remember everyone talking about this when like the first book came out, and I really, really wanted to read it, and I kind of waited until now, and I feel like I missed the boat on it. And if I had read it in 2014 when it had actually come out, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But I have seen a lot of people say that this is their like least favorite in the duology, that it just didn't really meet the hype of the first book. Like, by the end of the first book, things are so exciting, and you're like, oh my god, this is crazy. And it really hooked me, and then reading this book, nothing really happened. But the atmosphere again with this book was really, really good, and you can feel like this just creepy like shadow of doom kind of when you're reading it, and I really enjoyed that aspect. But it was really the characters and just the cheesiness of it that really made it fall flat for me. And then the only book I ended up finishing in the month of April was At the Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This, like I said, I had read after I'd picked up The Woman in Cabin 10, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I've heard so many people say that the ending with this is just crazy, and it's one of the best like thriller horror novels that they've read in a long time, and I totally agree. I really, really enjoyed it. The whole like big surprise at the end, I didn't necessarily expect. I'm sure I could have if I had really looked into it, but I like to go into thrillers not knowing anything about them and not really trying to figure out all the plot lines. I just kind of want to be surprised and let the book take me where it wants to take me. And I really, really enjoyed this. I listened to it on audiobook, and you could just hear like all the weird like sounds and stuff. If I'm remembering right, like it just felt creepy when I was reading it, and I felt like I was in this creepy big house and I didn't know what was going on. And it was just like, I had so much fun reading this. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't want to say too much about it, so if you are curious about it, look into the book. But if you like really atmospheric, creepy, like thriller novels with like really good twists, I highly recommend this. The one thing I have seen is that a lot of people have said that the like ending is wrapped up too quickly. I do agree with that. I wish it had taken a little bit more time to kind of delve into the big twists and stuff, but I did still enjoy what the twists were. Alright, so those are all the books I ended up reading in the month of March and April. Like I said, not very good. Before this whole pandemic hit, I was reading like 10 to 12 books a month, and I only ended up reading 5 and then 1, which is not good at all for me, but I'm hoping over the next month, as things kind of calm down a little bit, hopefully, and things potentially start opening up, maybe I can get a little bit more reading done. And I have really big plans for June for reading, so I'm hoping to like get in the swing of it before then, so I don't like ruin my own plans for June, if that makes sense. So one thing I did start was this like little TBR jar box that has all these pieces of paper in it that have like different categories of books or different prompts or something to find on my bookshelves for books to read. So I'm gonna pull out 3 pieces of paper and hope that I read all 3. We'll see what happens though. I'm really curious. All right, first one. Book written by a new to you author. Let me come back to that when I have all the pieces of paper. Let's see. Complete a series. Oh, why did I put that on there? Can you read that? Yeah. All right. And I want these to be all separate books, so I can't use the same one. Yeah. Purple on the cover. Yes. Don't mind my really, really poorly painted nails. Okay, let me find these books and I'll be right back. All right, sorry if my camera angle changed a lot. I accidentally hit my camera, but I think I have the 3 books I'm going to try reading. So for purple on the cover, I'm going to read The Last Vampire 3 Red Dice by Christopher Pike. This is like a horror series from like the 90s, I want to say. The 90s. Yeah, 95. This was published about vampires. It's very like teen vampire peak of the 90s. I love this series. I read the 4th one when I was a kid and I never read any of the rest of the series. So I've been trying to read it. This is the next one on my list to read. So I'm going to read this. A new to you author, I'm going to read Are You My Mother? A comic drama by Alison Bechdel. Can't pronounce that. This is a graphic novel, an autobiographical graphic novel. It's supposed to be really funny. It's about her relationship with her mother. I wanted to read this. Now is a great time. And then to complete a series, I will be reading Certain Girls by Jennifer Weiner. This is a duology. Can't even remember what the first book is about, to be honest. So I'm going to jump into this kind of blind, not remembering anything. I might have to read like some roundups on the first book because I really don't remember. I read it like over a year ago, I think. I just remember it takes place in Philly, and it's about a girl who her boyfriend basically refers to her as fat in like an article he was writing, and that's all I remember, which is not great. So these are the 3 books that I'm going to try to read in the next month. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I feel like 2 of them are going to be really quick. 1 of them might take a little bit longer, and I'm excited about it. So I will see you guys with my next video. Bye.